I was halfway through loading the dishwasher when I realized my wife had started calling our life together a portfolio. "Did you update your beneficiary designations?" Mara asked, leaning on the counter with her tablet. "It's just housekeeping." Housekeeping sounded harmless. So did the way she'd begun to kiss my cheek every morning with the crisp efficiency of a clock-in. We had been married 7 years. Most things had softened voices at night, the towels the middle cushions of the couch, but her attention had sharpened around money. Not the spending of it, which she still did with a thrifty elegance, but its afterlife. What happens when one person is gone and the accounts keep breathing? Small things added up. She discovered my 401k dashboard password by accident. She asked what POD and TOD meant on a bank form and then suggested we switch to them for clarity. One night, she switched movie genres from documentaries about travel to a series about probate court and said it was just research for the budgeting blog she'd started and abandoned in the same week. When her great-aunt died and left her something significant, Mara didn't mention it until a cousin over a skillet of peppers at a backyard cookout congratulated her on the windfall. Later, I asked how much significant meant. She shrugged and said, "High six figures, I don't know yet." It turned out to be a little over $380,000. She told me 3 weeks after she knew. The day after I learned that I met my oldest friend for a beer. Ria Patel and I had shared a shoebox of a dorm room, a borrowed microwave, and an exam drive that made her into an oncologist, and me into the operations manager of a mid-sized design firm. Ria had the dark, slightly unkind humor that medicine either cultivates or selects for. I told her lightly at first about Mara's new obsession with planning for my theoretical disappearance. I tried to make it sound ridiculous. She wants me to be a smart ghost, but it did not land. Ria listened. She didn't change her face when I said I felt as if I'd been moved from the spouse line to the asset column. "You could just talk to her," Ria said. Then she took a sip and added, "Or you could see what she does when it looks like the thing she's been circling actually happens." "How am I supposed to?" "I have your annual next week," she said. If a page with the right words existed on the wrong desk at the right time, and if a wife who always insists on coming to your appointments saw it, you'd have your answer. There would be a way to do this without any real record. A prop, like theater. It should have felt monstrous. It felt instead like physics. The device would not make Mara do anything she did not already want to do. It would only measure direction. We planned quietly. This is what quietly looks like when your friend is a department chief and your wife believes in being present for your health, a real exam, a real blood draw, and one invented page slid onto a clipboard while I got dressed. Ria would keep the sheet in a stack of discharge summaries so it looked boring. She would step into the hall to check on a consult. The page would say something no one confuses with a sprained ankle. Metastatic pancreatic adenocarcinoma, extensive involvement palliative regimen recommended, likely survival measured in months. We changed the phrasing twice to keep it vague and not melodramatic. The paper would never be scanned or signed. It would exist for 20 minutes and then the shredder. Mara was almost relieved when I told her my annual was on Tuesday afternoon. "Good," she said, stirring a pot of lemon risotto. "I'll block the time. She had been coming to my physicals since we started dating. I just want to make sure you tell the doctor everything she'd say." It sounded tender. Lately, it sounded like audit. The clinic smelled the way all clinics smell: disinfectant and coffee. Ria was brisk. She poked and prodded, asked about that ache in my shoulder from the time I fell off a ladder, scolded my salt intake, took blood. My numbers, she promised, have historically been boring. Then she excused herself. "Give me a second to check your labs from last year. You can put your shirt back on." I sat on the paper-covered table and felt the weight of the plan from my feet to my teeth. I thought about walking out. I thought about all the tiny questions Mara had asked while not asking about how I slept, about the way she called my brother your relative when she was annoyed. I thought about the word widow. I put my shirt on. When I turned, Mara had moved from the visitor chair to the standing chart. The page with the language was there. Ria's hospital letterhead, a block of cool type, no name at the top. I watched Mara read. She didn't inhale sharply or cover her mouth. Her eyes did not swim. She angled the page toward the window as if confirming watermark quality, then lifted her phone and took 3 quick photos each at a slightly different distance. She replaced the sheet where it had been. By the time Ria came back in, Mara was sitting again, scrolling mindlessly through a list of recipes, as if recipes could help. The drive home was as clean as the clinic. She kept the radio off. Her right hand sat on the gear stick, elegant and neutral, not reaching for me. By the time we hit our neighborhood brick row houses, sycamores dusting the pavement, she had fixed her voice to a soft, careful register. "Let's stay in tonight," she said. "I'll make that chicken you like." I tried to be grateful for the chicken. I tried to see love in the way she set the table and the parsley she chopped too fine in the cloth napkin folded into a triangle at my plate. I asked if she had any questions about the appointment. "We'll wait to hear formally," she said. "No reason to catastrophize until we know anything." She opened her laptop at the end of the table after we ate and started a grocery list that included broth and yogurt, the kinds of things you give someone whose body is doing difficult work. I went upstairs and put my face into a towel. On Thursday, Mara turned the dining room into a war room. She had stacks of printed forms, a set of neon tabs that looked like tiny flags, a yellow legal pad with headings written in square capital letters. Property Accounts Authorities. She had a white 3-ring binder with a title page that said, Household File, and our last name below it in a proud font, as if we were opening a franchise. "We should be practical," she said almost brightly as I set my keys on the server. "If there's a serious diagnosis on the horizon, we need to make sure the mechanics are in place. For my sake. For yours." She smiled like a person trying out a smile. "It's not romantic, but it's responsible." "Mechanics," I repeated. She pulled a packet from the center stack and placed it in front of me. "This is a durable power of attorney. It just means if you're incapacitated, I can make decisions. Banks, the mortgage company, the hospital, all of them will ask for this. If we wait until there's a crisis, we might have to go to court. That could take weeks. We should sign, now, notarize this afternoon." I leafed through the pages and saw the word irrevocable. "Why this version?" I asked. "It's the one everyone uses," she said without looking at me. I called around. "Who's everyone?" "2 lawyers," she said. "Also, I spoke with the person who handles our homeowner's policy. If the title of the house is in a living trust with me as trustee, probate is a non-issue. It also makes it easier to access the home equity line if," she stopped and drew a box around a line on the legal pad. "We should do that before anything is in the chart." "What chart?" "The medical record, Mason," she said gently as if instructing a child. Once there's something formal, companies start getting weird. It's better to move early when you're still healthy enough to sign everything without questions. Financial institutions are... She searched for the word and found a kind one. Cautious. I stared at the yellow pad. There were timestamps next to some items. 9:12 a.m. Speak to estate lawyer. Leave voicemail, if no answer. 10:03 a.m. Call life insurance carrier. Ask about beneficiary update process. 1:30 p.m. Notary, UPS store. In the margin, she had doodled a small ladder. "What did you ask the insurance company?" I said. Routine things, she said. Nothing that triggers a review. She picked up a second packet and slid it toward me. "This one is for your retirement accounts. Some plans let you designate transfer on death beneficiaries. It's faster, less paperwork for me later. For you, for us," she corrected quickly. But the word had already landed. "I'm thinking ahead because you can't. You're in it. You're emotional. That's normal. That's why I'm here." "Did you tell Rowan anything?" I asked. My brother had texted me the night before to ask if we were still on for Saturday breakfast. He liked the diner with the cracked laminate countertop and the waitress who called everyone sweetie without irony. "I told him you're under the weather," Mara said. "No visitors for a bit. The last thing you need is to perform being okay for family." "I don't perform," I said. "Everyone performs," she said and checked something off the list. "Do you have your driver's license? The notary will need it." "Why is there a copy of my passport in this stack?" I asked, turning another page. "In case we need certified copies," she said. "Some banks ask for them when you change owners." She blinked at me as if I were the one being unreasonable by reading words. "Mason, I'm trying to make this easier. It's what people do when there's news." She did not say diagnosis. She did not say cancer. She said mechanics and owners and easier. Her voice never cracked. I waited for the part where she would ask me how I felt if the appointment had scared me, if I wanted to take a walk, if I needed to call my mother and have her cry in that quiet way she cries into the heel of her hand. Mara highlighted a paragraph about agent authorities and listed the utilities in order of priority: gas, electric, water, internet. I made your favorite soup, she said after a minute. It's in the freezer. We can start stocking. Ria can give us a sense of the timeline once she has more to go on. Once she what I asked, confirms Mara said. But we shouldn't wait on logistics. She glanced at her phone. We're losing daylight. I looked at the binder title again, Household File, and imagined my name in it as a tab between health and estate. I thought about the way Mara had angled the page toward the window for a better photograph. I heard Ria's voice in my head saying measure direction. Okay, I said finally, letting the words sit between us like a weight. If we're being practical, let's be accurate too. Mara capped the highlighter, meaning I said, tapping the empty line where a signature should go about that diagnosis. I let the sentence hang in the air as flat and unmistakable as a dial tone, meaning I said, tapping the blank signature line about that diagnosis. Mara didn't flinch. We don't need to say it out loud. You sign, we notarize. I'll move the utilities and the title work forward, and we'll be positioned. That's the responsible thing. It isn't in the chart, I said. There's nothing formal. That's the point of moving early, she replied, drawing a tidy box around the word authorities on her yellow pad. Before institutions put up walls. Before you're— Don't say incapacitated, I said. She lifted her eyes, then the careful, almost pitying gaze she used for customer service calls. This is logistics, Mason. If you make it emotional, we'll miss windows. I slid the packet back. I watched you photograph a paper you weren't meant to see. You haven't asked me once how I'm doing. Not once. Mara's mouth edged toward a smile that wasn't joy. I assumed you didn't want to talk about it. Men don't. I don't want you planning for my absence like it's a launch, I said. I don't want a binder with tabs and a notary appointment before I've even gotten a phone call. Her pen stopped. She folded her hands, palms together. Tell me what you want and I'll add it to the list. I want you to hear me when I say the page you saw doesn't mean what you think. Medical euphemisms are a whole language, she said softly. I've learned to read tone. It wasn't a euphemism, I said. It was a prop. She laughed once, short and unbelieving. A prop. A test, I said. I needed to know whether I was a person to you or a problem to be solved. Mara stood so abruptly, the chair legs squealed. A wine glass on the server trembled. You staged an illness for sport. For clarity, I said. For one afternoon. Her jaw worked. Color rose into her cheeks, 2 bright coins. You are cruel, she said. Do you know that? You set a trap. And now you're proud I stepped into it. You set a table, I said, nodding at the stacks. For yourself. The glass on the server didn't survive the next minute. It hit the wall in a neat arc, the shatter like ice thrown on tile. 7 years, she said, voice low. 7 years, and instead of speaking to me, you played theater. You photographed my diagnosis and called 3 lawyers before dinner, I said. You told my brother I was sick and shouldn't see anyone. You slid a durable power of attorney across the table without asking what the doctor said. Mara pressed her fingertips to the bridge of her nose, breathed once, twice, as if putting herself back inside a shape. When she looked up, the expression was clean, almost serene. I'm staying at Serena's, she said, naming her sister. I'll take the white suitcase. Take whatever you need. Oh, I will, she said and smiled, then flat brilliant. From this room and from the next few months of your life. You don't come back from this. If you wanted divorce papers, a conversation would have done. I didn't want divorce, I said. I wanted a hand on my shoulder in the car. I wanted someone to ask me if I was scared. She wheeled the suitcase down the hall. The door clicked shut with the polite finality of an email. By morning, the phone lit up like a fire alarm. Serena, their mother Nora, Ben, the cousin who'd spilled the windfall at the cookout. The messages orbited the same sun. How could you? Why would you fake something like that? Mara had composed a text with its own grammar. You fabricated cancer to manipulate me. Seek help. Do not contact me directly. All communication through counsel. I typed nothing back. I opened my laptop and made a folder named Evidence. Screenshots felt indecent and necessary. At 9:18 a.m., a post from Mara appeared on Facebook. Devastating to discover the man you married is a pathological liar who would pretend to be gravely ill for attention. Some people are truly sick, already consulting attorneys. The comments crowded in under it like fish to bread. This is abuse. Get out. I'm so sorry. A coworker of mine, Deidre from accounting, wrote, "Didn't Mara ask last month how to check the contestability period on life insurance? It sounded odd at the time." I didn't like that she wrote it. I was grateful that she did. 20 minutes later, the post vanished. My screenshots didn't. Hector Morales, a business law attorney who moonlighted as the unofficial consigliere of my firm, answered on the second ring. I told him everything from the binder to the photographs to the notary appointment I was meant to keep at 1:30. He didn't scold. He didn't laugh. He told me to forward what I had and to say nothing on the internet. "I'll loop in someone who does family law all day," he said. "You'll need a wall between your accounts and any sudden housekeeping, and a court can bless that wall." "Do I tell Rhea I pulled the pin?" I asked. "I'd leave the clinical friend out of any written record," Hector said. "It will all look cleaner if the only documents in play are the ones she generated, not the ones you didn't." By lunch, I was sitting in a walnut-trimmed conference room across from Hector and his partner, a precise woman named Karen Lang, who specialized in domestic cases. We slid paper across the table as if we were playing a quiet card game, my screenshots, the yellow pad headings, a photo of the binder title page, my notes from the dining room conversation. Karen asked short questions and wrote longer notes. "She's going to frame this as emotional abuse," Karen said, not unkindly. But her response to what she believed was a terminal diagnosis matters. The law cares about intent. If she moved to seize control of all decision-making and assets before a formal confirmation, that's evidence of exploitative intent. We'll file an emergency motion to prevent transfers and to restrain access to joint accounts above a set household stipend. We'll also ask the court to preserve electronic evidence texts searches. Searches, I said. People type their hearts into a white box, Karen said. If she Googled around how long you had and how to move property, we'll get it. Don't tell me if you know, I'd rather find out in discovery. At 4:30, a letter slid into my inbox from a claims specialist at Western Mutual Life, a company I had never given a dime. "We are conducting a routine verification related to policy number WML 8931. It named me as the insured Mara as owner and sole beneficiary, face value $1 million. The policy date was 8 months ago." I printed the letter and took it back to Karen's office. She read it twice, once as an attorney, and again it seemed as a person. "Do you remember signing an application?" she asked. "No." "Was a notary present with you?" "No." "Did a notary witness you stamp anything for you?" "No." Karen picked up the phone. "Hector, I need your white-collar brain. We've got a WML policy with a forged adult signature and an owner beneficiary who's recently posted about consulting attorneys on Facebook. Yes, I have the letter. Yes, it says 1 million. Hector appeared in the doorway in under a minute. "This is fraud territory," he said. "Insurance companies get religious about signatures. They'll refer to the Department of Insurance without blinking. We'll notify Western that the insured disputes the signature," Karen said, "and we'll advise them you didn't consent to medical information releases connected to underwriting." She typed as she spoke, the letters chasing one another down the screen. "Also, we move faster on the restraining order. If she has that kind of appetite, she has accounts we haven't seen." Accounts we hadn't seen appeared within the week. Discovery is an unglamorous word for the work of turning over cushions and seeing what rolls out. Subpoenas to banks, subpoenas to Google, a forensic image of Mara's iCloud by a court-approved vendor. The picture that took shape was an accountant's version of Art Small transfers $120 here, $240 there, leaving our joint checking and arriving at Shoreline Credit Union under the name Mara L. Doyle, a suffix I didn't know she used. Over 12 months, the total was $14,780. There were screenshots of online banking in an album titled Documents the Edges of a Manicure, visible in the corners. I'd thought the odd $40 at a pharmacy was ointment or batteries. It turned out to be Roundup transfers, a bank feature she'd enabled sweeping change into a bucket where I never looked. The iCloud image also caught what Karen had predicted search terms that read like a private seminar. Pancreatic cancer stage. 4 life expectancy months. What is contestability? Period life insurance after increase. Transfer on death house title. Spouse terminal signs of opioid overdose. Breathing. Home hospice timeline paperwork. Can banks freeze accounts if person is dying? The timestamps were from the afternoon at the clinic and the evening at our dining table. "What does this mean?" I asked, staring at the list even though I understood every word. "It means she was calibrating," Karen said. "That matters." Meanwhile, the public theater ground on. Serena posted an Instagram story with a gradient background. "Emotional torture is still torture, family or not." Nora texted me a paragraph that used cruelty twice and help once. Rowan, my brother, replied to Serena's story with a screenshot of Mara's vanished Facebook post and a message that said, "Was the life insurance research part of the help?" The story went dark an hour later. Ria texted, "You alive?" I wrote back, "Technically exemplary." She sent a single period, the universal sign for a friend at the edge of an ethical cliff, then let me know if anyone asks for my chart notes. There aren't any. We had the first sit-down with Mara's attorney 8 days after the binder. She arrived with Evelyn Cho, a high-polished litigator in a dark dress that looked like an answer to a question I hadn't asked. They took the far side of the table, poised identical fountain pens laid neatly on a yellow pad. Evelyn led with offense. "Your client orchestrated a false medical scenario designed to cause maximum distress to a spouse. He then used that distress to justify financial control. We are seeking exclusive use of the marital residence temporary support and a restraining order preventing harassment." Karen's expression didn't change. "Your client saw what she believed were terminal findings and responded by moving to consolidate all assets under her control within 48 hours, including procuring a durable power of attorney, granting herself sweeping authority. She also contacted multiple lawyers and an insurance carrier before her husband had a confirmed diagnosis. That conduct, combined with digital evidence, indicates an intent to exploit a perceived vulnerable partner." Evelyn's pen clicked once. "Digital evidence." Karen slid a sheath of paper across. "Preserved search queries from Ms. Doyle's iCloud pulled pursuant to a court order. Note the sequence: survival rates policy, contestability, title, transfer overdose, signs, hospice paperwork. We will introduce these to show state of mind." Mara looked at the table. The pulse in her throat beat high and visible. "We will be filing today for an injunction preventing any transfer of property cash withdrawals above household allowance and any changes to beneficiary designations." Karen continued, "We are also notifying Western Mutual that the insured disputes the signature on the $1 million policy taken out 8 months ago." Mara's eyes cut sideways to Evelyn. For the first time since she'd thrown the wineglass, she looked surprised. Evelyn recovered without a blink. "My client denies any fraudulent conduct. If a notary made a mistake, that's on the notary. Then we will welcome the notary's testimony," Hector said from his chair by the door. "If the notary exists." When the meeting ended, I stepped into the hall and sat on a bench that was either too low or I had grown too tall for rooms like this. I wrote to Rowan, "Please don't engage with her family online." He sent back a thumbs up formed from punctuation, and then, "Come to breakfast anyway. You look thin in stress." I smiled without meaning to. Western Mutual moved with efficiency born of risk. An investigator named Margot Lynn phoned me 2 days later and asked measured questions in a tone designed not to spook horses. Did I recall meeting with an agent? Num. Did I ever provide a urine sample for underwriting? Num. Did I sign a medical records release? Num. Margot sounded neither surprised nor satisfied. She thanked me for my time and an hour later emailed to inform me that per state law they had referred the matter to the Department of Insurance's fraud unit. Detective Luis Santos called me the following week. He was polite in the way of people who have learned that politeness saves time. He asked me to come downtown to give a statement and bring a copy of any documents I had that referenced the policy or beneficiary designations. In the fluorescent-lit interview room, he recorded my answers, then clicked the recorder off and said almost conversationally, "People don't usually forge $1 million signatures for exercise." "I don't know what she was thinking," I said. He nodded without judgment. "You'd be surprised how much thinking people do with a browser." He tapped a folder. "We've seen some of it." Karen filed the motions she'd promised. A judge, square glasses, measured cadence, signed an order freezing the accounts to basic household spend and prohibited changes to titles or beneficiaries absent court permission. The order read like a door shutting. We stopped using the joint card. I learned how many auto-pays I'd set and forgotten. I stood in my kitchen and wrote a check for the gas bill with a hand that felt older than it had last month. At Serena's condo, the temperature changed. I didn't see it. I heard it through the clicks and pings of other people's decisions. Serena's posts grew sparer. Nora's texts thinned to a terse weather. Ben, the cousin with the skillet of peppers, sent a DM that said simply, "I didn't know." I'm sorry. The arrest came on a Tuesday. I was eating a sandwich at my desk when my phone hummed with 3 messages in a row, one from Hector Call Me, one from Karen FYI C-Link, and one from Rowan, who simply pasted a headline from a local site that loved sirens and red banners: "Woman charged in alleged insurance fraud scheme. Forged spouse's signature on 1M Baller policy investigators say." I didn't click the article. I called Hector. Detective Santos executed the warrant, he said. She was booked and released on bail. Don't engage, don't gloat. Let me be very clear, do not text her. I wasn't going to. I said, though the flares in my body argued for action of any kind. Good, we keep to the civil lane. The state runs the criminal lane. Parallel roads. I made it to my car before I let my forehead touch the steering wheel. The horn let out a soft, embarrassed peep. I laughed once, an unflattering sound. Then I wiped my face with my sleeve and went back inside because a vendor had arrived with a fabric sample I needed to approve, because the world runs on freight and signatures, and someone had to sign things that were real. That night, Maggie from HR forwarded a statement from Mara's old firm. We are aware of reports regarding a former employee. We have no comment on personnel matters and stand by our decision to accept her resignation, effective last month. The sentence translated itself in my head into a door closing, another door, another. I didn't sleep long. When I woke, the screen of my phone had arranged itself into a mosaic of blue lights: Karen with updated hearing dates, Ria with a dot, and then take a walk today, no screens for an hour, Rowan with a photo of the diner counter, and 2 mugs steam uncurling into the morning. I stared at the image until the screen dimmed and my own face appeared in the black glass, hovering in the place where the steam had been. The week after Mara's arrest arranged itself into appointments and signatures, the calendar turning into a narrow hallway. Status conference, temporary orders, discovery deadlines, a criminal arraignment. I did not attend. Karen sat with me the morning of our first hearing and rehearsed answers the way coaches rehearse footwork. Short, literal, polite, she said. Don't reach for explanations. If you don't know, say you don't know. I know more than I want to, I said. That's not what will be asked. The courtroom was smaller than television teaches. A single row of benches. The judge's bench high without being grand. Evelyn Cho waited on the far side with Mara, who had learned a new stillness. She wore a slate dress and a coat that looked seasonless. When our eyes met, hers registered nothing. I could name fatigue calculation a smooth, expensive kind of neutrality. The judge, gray hair, squared-off glasses, voice like a metronome, took the bench. We're here on cross motions for temporary orders, he said, glancing at the docket. I have read the papers. Counsel. Evelyn stood first. Your Honor, Mr. Hale. She gestured at me without looking, orchestrated a false medical scenario for the purpose of coercing Mrs. Doyle into surrendering marital control. He engineered distress, then punished her response. We ask for exclusive use of the marital residence for Mrs. Doyle, temporary support, and a restraining order preventing further harassment. Karen rose. Your Honor. Ms. Doyle saw what she believed were terminal findings and responded not with care but with consolidation durable. Power of attorney granting herself plenary authority. Immediate contact with multiple attorneys calls to a life insurer. Within 48 hours, she was moving to seize all decision-making and assets. The court already has the screenshots and the iCloud search history reflecting state of mind. The judge's gaze ticked from one podium to the other. Let's start with the restraining orders in place, he said. They stay. No direct contact except through counsel. No social media commentary about the litigation. I will not referee Instagram. Evelyn didn't blink. Karen nodded once. And the house, the judge asked. Separate property predating the marriage, Karen said. He purchased it 2 years before the wedding. Title never changed. She seeks possession on the theory of emotional need, but her need was self-created. We ask for exclusive use for Mr. Hale and an order preventing any attempt to encumber the property. Evelyn. She moved out because he terrorized her with a fabricated diagnosis. Emotional need is not self-created. The judge made a note with a fine black pen. I'll rule after testimony, he said. Call your first witness. Margot Lynn from Western Mutual testified by video. A neat bun, a measured tone. She explained underwriting like she was teaching a seminar application paramedical exam signed authorizations. We received an application 8 months ago naming Mr. Hale as insured, Mrs. Doyle as owner, and sole beneficiary, face amount $1 million, she said. The application contained a signature purporting to be Mr. Hale's. Our records show no paramedical exam conducted on Mr. Hale and no recorded medical authorization on file. The signature does not match other exemplars. Did you approve the policy? Karen asked. We placed it in force pending verification, which is permitted under our guidelines, Margot said. We are now investigating. Per statute, we referred the matter to the Department of Insurance. Evelyn stood for cross. Your company allowed a policy without an exam and now wants to blame my client for your process. We follow layered verification, Margot said evenly. One layer failed, others did not. We investigate to determine intent. That's my job. Detective Santos testified next. In a gray suit that looked like it had seen both weddings and arraignments, he ran through the mechanics of his warrant bank subpoenas, email headers, a notary registry, with no entry matching the stamp on the application. No dramatics, just sequence. Karen called me last. My hands didn't shake on the Bible because I'd never been taught to fear paper. I told the judge about the binder, the neon tabs, the list with timestamps. I described the packet of durable power of attorney forms on the dining table. The notary appointment at 1:30 p.m. at the UPS store. The phrases mechanics owners. You're in it, you're emotional, and the way Mara had angled the page in Ria's office for a better photograph. Evelyn's cross-examination was as clean as a scalpel. Mr. Hale, you admit you participated in a staged display of medical information? I admit a page existed that was never part of my chart, designed to look like part of your chart, designed to test whether the woman I live with would ask me how I felt. You wanted a performance, she said. I wanted a conversation, I said. Instead, you put a prop in a clinic, she said. And now you ask this court to reward you for it. Karen didn't object. The judge didn't need to be told when a sentence was more theater than law. He ruled from the bench at the close of evidence. Exclusive use of the residence to Mr. Hale, he said. The property is his separate estate, and Ms. Doyle has alternative housing. The existing financial restraining orders remain. Neither party may transfer, hide, or encumber assets outside ordinary living expenses. Ms. Doyle is ordered not to change any beneficiary designations or open any lines of credit in Mr. Hale's name. Temporary support is deferred pending detailed financial affidavits. The gavel wasn't a bang, but a polite knock. We collected our files and left. Discovery loosened the floorboards under the next month. Karen's office handled most of it, but pieces floated back to me like papers lifted by air conditioning. Bank records from Shoreline Credit Union showing the small siphons. A screen capture from an email where Mara asked a friend for the contact information of a notary who doesn't make things complicated. The iCloud search terms printed in 10-point font and highlighted in yellow: contestability, period, transfer on death, opioid overdose, signs home hospice timeline. A column of private thought made public. There was a day for Mara's deposition. She arrived with Evelyn and a bottle of water she didn't open. The court reporter introduced herself with a softness that humanized the room, then swore Mara in. Karen did the asking. Ms. Doyle, did you take out a life insurance policy on Mr. Hale naming yourself as owner and beneficiary? I declined to answer on Fifth Amendment grounds, Mara said. Karen glanced at Evelyn. This is a civil deposition, she said. We're not in criminal court. Evelyn. My client asserts her Fifth Amendment privilege where answers could tend to incriminate. Karen didn't sigh. Noted, she said. Did you photograph a page in Dr. Patel's office that you believed reflected a terminal diagnosis? Mara looked at a spot on the table. Yes. Did you, within 48 hours, prepare a durable power of attorney, naming yourself as agent contact, 2 attorneys about transferring assets, and schedule a notary appointment? Yes. What was the purpose of the durable power of attorney? Practicality. Karen paused long enough for the court reporter to look up. Practicality for whom? For our household, Mara said. For me to make things easier. Karen set the iCloud printout on the table and didn't push it closer. Please read the highlighted terms and tell me if they are searches you conducted on the date indicated. Mara read. Her voice didn't wobble. Yes, she said when she reached the end. Evelyn interjected. We'll reserve arguments about interpretation, she said. We always do, Karen replied. The criminal case moved on a separate track with its own smell and schedule. I learned things secondhand, hearing dates, filings, a photo of a docket sheet that Hector texted me with the caption, routine. Mara's criminal counsel, a silver-haired man who specialized in white-collar salvage, filed motions that sounded like fire breaks, suppress this, exclude that, sever the policy from the searches. The Department of Insurance sent a letter confirming referral to the district attorney. Western Mutual sent another confirming their internal findings, no exam performed, no authorization on file signature inconsistent with exemplars. One afternoon, Karen called and said, "They've asked if you would support a non-custodial sentence if she pleads." "I don't sentence people," I said. "You don't," she agreed. "But prosecutors like to know if victims want jail. You can say you have no position. I had a position, but it didn't fit in any of the boxes. Write that I defer to the state," I said, "and that I want the injunctions to stand and the civil case resolved." "You don't need to sound noble," Karen said. "You just need to be clear." The final hearing in the divorce proved both ordinary and strange, like signing for a package that contained a copy of your life. We had worked through the inventory and drafts and Redline's house to me as separate property. Furniture divided by list rather than room. The white Lexus to me, the hatchback to her. Accounts frozen except for monthly household needs. Fees to be apportioned by the court. The remaining questions were support and who would carry which debts out of the fire. Evelyn argued that Mara was unemployed and should not bear support obligations. She left her job to care for her husband, she said, and now faces reputational harm from allegations that remain unproven. Karen's reply was dry thunder. She left to pursue an asset consolidation that failed, she said. The reputational harm is self-authored. Meanwhile, Mr. Hale took leave to address the emotional fallout of discovering a spouse treating him as a transaction. He is the only current wage earner. He seeks modest support for a limited duration and an award of fees given the conduct that created the posture of this case. The judge asked his own questions. "Ms. Doyle," he said, "did you open a Shoreline Credit Union account into which you moved incremental amounts from the joint?" "Yes," Mara said. "Did you take out a life insurance policy on Mr. Hale without his knowledge?" Mara's eyes flicked to Evelyn. "Answer yes or no, please," the judge said. "Yes," she said. "I believed it was prudent." "Did you represent to third parties that Mr. Hale was seriously ill before any formal diagnosis?" "Yes," she said. "I thought—" "Thank you," the judge said, stopping the sentence with a raised hand. He tapped his pen once on the bench. "Mr. Hale, you did in fact participate in a staged display of clinical language at your physician's office." "Yes," I said. "No records were created." He nodded, not approving, not condoning, simply recording. He took a moment with his notes, then spoke, his voice the same even cadence he had used all morning. "On the evidence before me," he said, "I find that Mr. Hale's residence is his separate property and award him exclusive use and possession. I adopt the existing financial restraints as final. Neither party will transfer, conceal, or encumber assets, except ordinary living expenses, without court approval. As to support, given Ms. Doyle's superior access to liquid assets at the outset of these proceedings and Mr. Hale's leave from work, I order temporary spousal support payable to Mr. Hale in the amount of $2,500 per month for 36 months. I assign the marital credit card debt to Ms. Doyle. On attorney's fees, I award Mr. Hale 75% of reasonable fees incurred to be calculated by affidavit." Evelyn stood. "Your Honor, that is the order of the court," he said, not unkindly. "Written decree to follow." Mara's shoulders fell a fraction, the coat slipping a little, the stillness cracking where the seams bore weight. She didn't look at me as we filed out. I didn't look for her. I signed papers in Karen's office, the way people sign delivery slips. She warned me about the part that comes after judgments, the weird, unglamorous work of implementing orders, titles to re-record beneficiary forms, to confirm locks, to rekey subscription services with my name on them that still lived in both our heads. "We'll shepherd the big pieces," she said. "You'll notice the small ones." Rowan took me to breakfast the next morning and ordered for both of us in the way of older brothers even when they're younger. The diner's coffee tasted like habit. The waitress called me sweetie without irony, and for a second I could see the version of myself that had never learned how to pronounce durable power of attorney. Back at the house, I stood in the dining room and looked at the ghost of the war table, the place where the binder had been, the yellow pad headings that still seemed to hum in the air. I boxed the last of Mara's mail and put it in the mudroom for Karen's courier. The front garden needed attention. The hydrangeas were performing their autumn costume change, and the weeds were ambitious. I pulled on gloves and gave my hands a job. That afternoon, the prosecutor's office sent a boilerplate email, plea conference held. Defendant entered plea of nolo contendere to 1 count of insurance fraud. Sentencing set next month. Hector forwarded it with a single line, as expected. Karen replied with an automatic out of office that still delivered the uncanny message my life was an inbox other people could leave messages in. In the evening, I opened the window above the sink and listened to the little noises a house makes when it stops bracing. The red light on the answering machine, a museum piece I kept for Rowan's amusement, blinked with 2 messages. The first was my mother's voice, careful and crisp, asking if I wanted Sunday dinner and reminding me she had leftover roast in the freezer. The second was Serena, the sentence clipped short by the machine's time limit. You have no, then a tone and silence. I washed the plate I'd used and set it in the rack. The court's order sat in a folder on the counter cream paper with a raised seal that felt like texture more than authority. I slid it into the household file I had made and labeled myself. The binder had a plain white cover and a spine you could write on. I printed a label that said simply "House" and pressed it into place. The world loves its shelves. When I turned off the kitchen light, the room held its shape without me. I went upstairs and lay down on the bed that used to be ours, and now was not an ours at all. The ceiling fan ticked. Somewhere outside, a car door thudded shut, and an engine started overstated for the hour. I thought of Ria's admonition, short, literal, polite, and understood that it applied beyond courtrooms. The house exhaled. I slept without dreams. Sentencing took place in a pale courtroom that smelled faintly of toner. I sat behind the bar with Hector and Karen. Mara stood at counsel table beside a gray-suited man from the criminal bar who introduced himself to the judge with a smooth, well-used voice. She kept her hands flat on the table and stared at a point just over the bench as if reading a line only she could see. The prosecutor summarized the referral from the Department of Insurance. Western Mutual's investigator confirmed the absent exam, the missing authorization, the inconsistent signature. Mara's counsel rose to explain circumstances and stress that no money had been paid on the policy. The judge asked 3 questions in a tone that didn't invite embroidery. Did the defendant enter the application? Did she represent herself as owner? Did the insured consent? The answers under oath shaped themselves into the plea they had already negotiated. Nolo contender to 1 count of insurance fraud, the judge said, marking the form. 2 years probation, 200 hours of community service, $10,000 fine, and compliance with any civil orders already in place. He turned the page. No contact with the insured except through counsel in the related domestic matter. The gavel sound wasn't theatrical. Papers shuffled. A clerk handed Mara a sheet describing where to report for probation intake. She nodded once, took a pen from her attorney, signed, and left without turning. I watched the door close and felt the day give a small measured click like a lock settling. Afterward, emails continued to arrive with their clerical certainty. The decree in the divorce case came back from the clerk's office with a raised seal. Karen's paralegal sent a checklist record the deed confirmation. Forward the utility authorizations. Confirm that the banks had memorialized the injunctions into their software. I initialed where I was told, sent scans, and carried originals to a safe deposit box whose key I kept on a ring with the house and mailbox. Rowan stopped by on a Saturday with mulch and an extra rake. We didn't talk about courtrooms. We talked about the white hydrangeas going green around the edges and the way the soil stayed damp beneath the surface, even when the top looked tired. He stacked the empty bags by the trash bin and left a carton of eggs on the counter, farm ones, in a box too pretty to throw away. When the house was quiet again, I carried the carton to the fridge and, out of habit, wrote the date on the lid. The letter from the estate lawyer found me a week later. The envelope was cream, the return address, a downtown building with ivy clinging to brick. We represent the personal representatives of the estate of Inez Calloway. It began using the full name of Mara's great-aunt, whom I had only heard called Aunt Inez. Questions have arisen concerning certain transfers and the execution of testamentary documents in the 2 years preceding Ms. Calloway's death. As you were married to Ms. Mara Doyle during that period, We request your cooperation and testimony regarding relevant patterns of financial control and access. I sat with the letter for an afternoon before calling Karen. She read it and spoke in a voice trimmed of surprise. They will be looking for pressure points who had the checkbook, who drove to the bank, who set appointments with notaries. She paused. You can say what you saw and decline what you didn't. Don't speculate. At the probate hearing, the courtroom felt like a cousin of the one I had already come to know. Same varnished pews, a different seal on the wall. Aunts and uncles I had never met sat in a row, solemn in practical suits. The estate lawyer methodically walked through bank statements, showing checks written from Aunt Inez's account to new destinations, signatures that changed shape in the months after a fall, emails arranging meetings with a mobile notary who can accommodate fragile clients. A forensic accountant, white-haired and precise, explained how pattern analysis works, amounts, frequencies, beneficiaries who appear only at the end of a life. My turn was brief. I answered questions about what lived on my dining table the week we called it the war room, about the binder with tabs, about the way Mara had spoken to me in the language of mechanics and owners. I didn't say more than I knew. I kept to the edges where my feet had actually stood. The judge froze the remainder of the estate pending resolution and ordered a formal accounting. Weeks later, a stipulation arrived: settlement rather than a fight. Mara would return $200,000 to the estate. The personal representatives would dismiss claims beyond that repayment. The document had more semicolons than most conversations. It also had signatures layered and final. The practical consequences worked their way outward. Serena's posts on social media thinned to pictures of coffee and weather. Nora texted once about a casserole swap at church and did not follow up. A cardboard box arrived on my porch with Mara's name printed in a courier's hand. Inside were 3 items that had been hers and had chosen the stubborn path of mail and umbrella: a sweater left at the dry cleaner, a paperback with its spine broken in the middle. I set the box in the mudroom, then called Karen's office to have a courier collect it. Ria brought lemons from a friend's tree and stood with me on the front steps in a windbreaker that made a crisp sound when she moved. You look less sharp at the edges, she said, watching the clouds lift off the roof lines. I sleep, I said. That's data, she replied, smiling with only one corner of her mouth. She didn't ask about court. She didn't ask about Mara. We talked about soup and the way hospitals smell the same in every state. When she left the house held the trace of citrus and the idea that kitchens have seasons. On a plain afternoon, the clerk stamped the last affidavit for fees and mailed a copy to each counsel. A ledger balanced. I took the document from the mailbox, slid it under a magnet shaped like a pear, and made coffee. In the quiet between the machine's clicks, I heard the hum of the refrigerator, the tick of the hall clock, the low churn of the heating system, deciding whether the day warranted effort. I walked the rooms not to count or claim them, but to feel their proportions: the narrowness of the back hall, the generous square of the living room, the small, earnest foyer that made guests stand a little straighter. Toward evening, a light rain began. The hydrangeas darkened. The bricks looked new. I set a chair just inside the open door and listened to tires hiss on the street and to the patter in the empty bird bath. The binder on the shelf, white spine labeled House, sat among cookbooks, and a stapled manual for the boiler the previous owner had left in a drawer. The sight of it didn't punch anymore. It was a file, no more and no less. When it grew cooler, I latched the door and turned on the lamp by the couch. The room found its shape and stayed there. Upstairs, the fan ticked the same steady rhythm I'd heard the night before. I stood at the window, watched the rain thin to mist, and reached to pull the chain that darkened the room. The house settled floor by floor with the small, sensible sounds houses make when they are done for the day. Thank you so much for listening to today's story. If this story resonated with you or made you reflect, I'd love to hear your thoughts, so feel free to share them in the comments below. And don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell so you won't miss the next story. I'll see you next time as we continue exploring more journeys and lessons together.